Imagine someone insults you in front of everyone. Your blood boils, your hands shake, and you're ready to fire back. But then you remember you're a Stoic. So instead of reacting, you smirk and sip your tea like nothing happened. Why? Because Stoics don't react first, they respond wisely. And if you've ever wondered why the calmest person in the room always wins, you're about to find out. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to support our journey into Stoic wisdom. It really helps the channel grow. And make sure to watch till the end, because what you'll learn today might just save you from your next emotional meltdown. Number 1, the Stoic philosophy of self-mastery. Stoicism teaches that control over our own minds is the highest form of power. For a Stoic, emotions aren't enemies, they're signals. But reacting immediately to them is like trying to drive a car while it's still on fire. Stoics pause, assess, and then act. It's not that they don't feel. Oh, they do. But they choose not to be puppets pulled by their emotions. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, famously said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't mean never feel, but rather never be ruled by the feeling. The first to react often loses control of the situation and themselves. By not reacting first, Stoics reclaim their power. They step back and observe both the external event and their internal state. This isn't weakness, it's the most disciplined form of strength. It's like being the calm adult in a room full of toddlers throwing tantrums. Except sometimes those toddlers are grown adults. And yes, it takes effort, but once mastered, it becomes second nature. A Stoic might be insulted, provoked, or challenged, but their first move is always inward. They examine the judgment before expressing it. That small space between stimulus and response, that's where the Stoic lives. Number 2, emotional reactivity is a trap. The modern world glorifies fast reactions, hot takes, impulsive tweets, rage replies. But Stoics see emotional reactivity as a trap laid by our egos. When someone wrongs us, our pride wants vengeance. But Stoics understand that most people are acting from ignorance, not malice. Seneca once said, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." Let that sink in. You could ruin your entire day or your whole career by reacting in 10 seconds of rage. That's a high price for a low return. Meanwhile, the Stoic watches calmly, perhaps thinking, "Poor guy, must be having a rough morning." When you react instantly, you're letting someone else control your behavior. It's like giving your emotional remote to the person who annoys you the most. Stoics keep that remote firmly in their own hands. They decide how and when to respond, if at all. In fact, sometimes the best response is no response at all. Not because they're afraid, but because they're wise enough to know that not every battle is worth fighting. Or, as Epictetus might put it, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Try using that line next time someone's trying to get a rise out of you. It's basically a Stoic mic drop. Number 3, strategic silence and the power of observation. When you don't react first, you gain something invaluable, information. The Stoic isn't silent out of fear, they're silently collecting data. Like a chess player watching the board, they wait. Every emotional outburst from others gives them an advantage. The more others reveal, the less the Stoic needs to. Silence is not passive, it's strategic. It creates a gap between what happens and how you choose to respond. That gap is where clarity lives. A Stoic knows that rash reactions are usually based on incomplete information. So they observe, not to win arguments, but to understand the situation better than anyone else. Take a page from history. Cato the Younger, the devout Stoic, was known for his thoughtful pauses during Senate debates. While others barked like angry seals, Cato waited. He listened, and when he finally spoke, people shut up. Why? Because his words came from reason, not ego. You don't always have to say something back. Sometimes silence says it all. If your calmness unsettles people, you're probably doing something right. After all, nothing confuses the emotionally immature more than someone who refuses to play their game. Number 4, the inner victory over ego. Reacting first is often an ego game. The ego says, don't let them get away with that. But the Stoic says, why should I let them disturb my peace? It's not about being weak. It's about being strong enough to walk away from the unnecessary. The Stoic path isn't emotionless. It's egoless. And that's a big difference. While others are driven by the need to be right, the Stoic is driven by the need to be wise. If your self-worth hinges on clapping back at every slight, you're building your identity on sand. Humor helps here too. The Stoic might laugh to themselves when someone acts out, not out of mockery, but because they see how ridiculous it is to be controlled by such petty things. Think of it like watching someone argue with a traffic light. It's pointless, but a little funny. The real win isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving to yourself that you don't need to be reactive to feel powerful. The Stoic holds their ground not with rage, but with reason. And believe it or not, that quiet power echoes louder than any shouted comeback. Number 5, practicing the Stoic delay in daily life. So, how do you train yourself not to react first? Simple, not easy, but simple. The next time you feel your emotions rising, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this reaction necessary? Is it helpful? Will it serve me? That short pause could save you years of regret. Start small. Practice in traffic. When someone cuts you off, instead of shouting, think, may they arrive safely. Yes, you might sound like a monk, but it beats high blood pressure. When someone says something rude, smile internally and move on. Not because you're weak, but because you're free. Stoicism is a daily discipline. It's a muscle you build with repetition. You'll mess up. You'll react sometimes. That's okay. Just reflect, learn, and grow. The Stoic doesn't aim for perfection. They aim for progress. In the end, the one who responds last, calmly and consciously, is usually the one who wins. Because when you master yourself, you master every situation. So, next time life throws a jab, remember, don't flinch, philosophize. Number 6, reactivity is the enemy of freedom. A core belief in Stoicism is that freedom is internal, not external. Most people think freedom means doing or saying whatever they want. But to the Stoic, true freedom is the ability to choose your response, especially when emotions are pulling at you like wild horses. Reacting first is giving up that freedom. It's letting someone else push your buttons like you're a vending machine of emotional outbursts. When you react impulsively, you become a slave to circumstance. One insult, you're offended. One delay, you're enraged. One rejection, you're shattered. You're not in control, you're being controlled. It's like living your life with a kick me sign on your soul, and everyone's taking turns. The Stoic refuses that game entirely. By delaying reaction, you reclaim that inner autonomy. You prove that you're not just a leaf blown around by every gust of life, but a rooted tree. And trees don't flinch when the wind blows. They bend, then return to stillness. That's what Stoic freedom looks like. So while others are panicking, ranting, or throwing shade, the Stoic remains composed. Because real power isn't saying the first word, it's having the strength to wait, evaluate, and choose your words like a master swordsman selects his strike, only when it matters. Number 7, Stoic composure in conflict. When conflict arises, at work, in relationships, or even online, the pressure to react instantly can feel overwhelming. Our pride demands it. Our fear pushes it. But the Stoic takes a different route. In the face of conflict, they ask, is this about truth or just ego? That question alone saves them from falling into the trap of heated emotional warfare. The goal of the Stoic isn't to win arguments, it's to maintain inner peace. While others are throwing verbal punches, the Stoic is dodging with grace and quiet understanding. They're not passive, they're precise. The person who keeps their cool in conflict isn't weak. They're just not willing to trade their peace for temporary dominance. Take the example of Socrates. He would calmly question and dismantle his opponent's arguments without ever raising his voice. Some called him irritating, others brilliant. But all agreed, he never reacted emotionally, even when his life was at stake. That's a top-level Stoic. You don't need to silence your emotions, but you do need to train them. When conflict comes knocking, remember, reacting first might feel good, but responding with clarity and calmness feels right. Let the noise pass, and speak only when silence can't say what needs to be said. Number 8, the delay as a form of wisdom. The Stoic delay isn't avoidance, it's intelligence. When others react immediately, Stoics wait intentionally. That short pause isn't empty space. It's filled with judgment, discipline, and strategy. And make no mistake, waiting is hard. In a world that rewards speed, Stoics reward accuracy. Think of it like cooking. If you react too quickly and take the dish off the stove early, it's ruined. If you leave it to simmer, you get flavor. Stoics simmer. They let their emotions breathe. They observe their instincts, question their judgments, and then decide. That delay gives clarity. And with clarity comes better decisions, stronger outcomes, and fewer regrets. Most people don't regret what they didn't say in anger. They regret the words they couldn't take back. Stoics get this. Their silence often speaks louder than rage ever could. So next time you feel tempted to react quickly, pause, breathe, count to 10, or count to 25 if you've had too much coffee. Then ask yourself, will this response serve my character or just my pride? If the answer is pride, let it go. The wise never rush wisdom. Number 9, power in the unmoved mind. To remain unmoved is not to be indifferent. It's to be deliberate. Stoics don't flinch because they've trained their minds like soldiers train their reflexes. And in that stillness lies immense power. In fact, nothing terrifies manipulators more than someone who refuses to give an emotional reaction. In a way, not reacting is like having emotional armor. People might try to provoke you, insult you, or bait you, but their weapons just bounce off. And eventually, they get tired of swinging. Stoics know that calmness is not weakness, it's a tactic. And it often leaves the aggressor looking foolish. When you don't react, you create a vacuum, an uncomfortable silence that forces the other person to reflect on their own behavior. You hold up a mirror to them without saying a word. That's next-level psychological judo. You don't push back, you just don't budge. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That quote has survived centuries for a reason. It works. When your mind remains unmoved, you walk through chaos untouched. And trust me, that kind of energy is hard to mess with. Number 10, responding last means responding best. Here's the truth. Stoics don't respond first because the best response often comes last. It's the one that takes everything into account. The context, the consequences, the character of the person involved. It's not slow, it's strategic. Anyone can react in the heat of the moment. That's easy, but to pause, evaluate, and respond with integrity, that takes strength. And Stoics aren't interested in looking strong. They won't be strong. That's why they wait, they reflect, and then they speak with precision. This principle applies everywhere. Relationships, business, even social media. When someone posts something offensive or ignorant, don't jump in with caps lock fury. Let others waste their energy. You wait. If you choose to respond, make it so thoughtful that silence almost would have been louder. Think of the Stoic response as a finishing move, not a flurry of punches, but one well-placed blow that ends the fight without breaking a sweat. And often, that response is so calm, so rooted in logic, that it leaves the other person stunned and maybe even enlightened. If you made it this far, thank you. You're not just watching, you're learning to master yourself. And that's what Stoicism is all about. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment with one moment where staying calm changed everything for you. Let's build this community of unshakable minds, one quiet, powerful thought at a time.